change, protesters returned to the streets of London today, bringing gridlock to Westminster and Whitehall and other parts of the capital. A number of celebrities turned up to add their support at the start of what the Extinction Rebellion organisers say will be 2 weeks of demonstrations. They want the government to declare a climate change emergency. On day one, police made nearly 300 arrests.
The chant of protest as police run towards demonstrators chained to a hearse in the very heart of London. The images are shocking, and they're designed to be. The hearse symbolising a dying planet, the rebels ready to risk their safety for future generations.
I'm just a father of 2 children that's very frightened of their future.
And emotion is often close to the surface. There is music and dancing, but the thousands gathering in London are not here to celebrate. This trailer bringing Trafalgar Square to a halt because of a young IT worker chaining herself to its chassis.
What's happening here shows you the lengths protesters are willing to go to. It's claustrophobic, it's uncomfortable, it's dangerous. But 5,000 of the rebels who are coming to London this week have said they're willing to be arrested for the cause.
We spoke just before that happened.
Why risk your future for this?
I don't have a future anyway if climate change continues to happen. If the climate and ecological disaster continues on, like, what are we going to be doing?
Around her, the traffic jams grew, but tempers largely stayed in check, for now at least.
No, it's okay. It's for the global and pollution.
So you back them despite the inconvenience?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous because we had no warning. I'm trying to just do a job, and it's all of a sudden we've come into this.
But many feel they have to be here. On Lambeth Bridge, we found a former chief superintendent, not policing, but protesting.
I joined the police to protect the community, and I feel the need to do that again. Our government are just not doing enough to address the climate emergency.
Alongside him, a group of NHS doctors.
What do we want?
Climate justice!
The crowd, mostly educated and often professionals, with the odd famous face.
The possibility of extinction of our species as well as all the other species that are dying at the moment is a very difficult thing to look at and not just give up or feel hopeless about.
Just a year old, the Extinction Rebellion movement has already won the support of thousands. But with much more disruption to come, it could lose public goodwill even faster. Rachel Younger, News at 10, Central London.
Well, the protesters are still out there tonight despite the rain over London. Trafalgar Square is one of 11 sites across the capital targeted. Much quieter now than during the day earlier, but some of the protesters, as you can probably still hear, are still going. And at an event this evening, the Prime Minister apparently described the protesters as uncooperative crusties who litter the roads. But the protests are still going on around the world. In New York this evening, protesters were using shock tactics, dousing statues and streets with fake blood and lying on the ground, pretending to be dead. They've been making their arguments in many major cities. But do those arguments stack up, and do they have the support of the international science community?
If you live in one of the world's major cities, you'd be hard-pushed not to have heard of them. And if they have their way, we'll all know about them in a week or two. Yet Extinction Rebellion is barely a year old. So who are they?
Extinction!
XR, as it's also known, claims its brand of non-violent direct action has its roots in the civil rights and suffragette movements. We're talking green grassroots here. There are no leaders, but we caught up with one of its founder members. Do you think you're taking the rest of society with you? You're asking a lot of any government, you're asking a lot of the citizens of the UK.
Well, the climate disaster that we're heading into is going to take everyone with it. So nobody gets a choice about whether or not they're interested in this issue. It's going to shape the rest of our lives forever. So if we don't manage to bring people with us now, then we all need to come together later on down the line.
So what do they want? XR is clear: to avoid what they describe as a climate emergency, UK carbon emissions must fall to 0 by 2025. Does the science back that up?
Most of the world has signed up to this Paris Agreement. We do have to act in a rapid way. So in that sense, it is an emergency. It doesn't mean that the climate change is going to happen next year. It's not an emergency in that sense. But if we are going to reach the Paris Agreement targets, then the scale of the changes that we would need to make mean that it's an emergency in terms of acting quickly.
If we haven't hit net zero emissions by 2050, there's a good chance of very bad things happening, like losing the world's ice sheets. So maybe it is worth getting arrested for. The emergency that Extinction Rebellion are calling is justified by the science of climate change, but the speed at which they're asking society to transform itself and get off fossil fuels means they are going to meet some stiff resistance. Essentially what the protesters want is a change in virtually every aspect of the modern economy. They might be rational demands, but are they realistic?
It's going to be quite difficult to get to net zero even by 2050. That's going to require many tens, hundreds of billions of pounds of investment and quite a lot of disruption as we change the way we heat our houses, change the way we drive our cars. You can do that in a 30-year period. You simply cannot do it in any sensible way over 5 years.
By calling for change too quickly and too forcefully, Extinction Rebellion risk alienating the majority. But the climate emergency is real, and the longer society takes to accept it, the more difficult and expensive it will be to avoid. Tom Clark, News at 10.
Now, another famous high street restaurant chain is